On a frozen December night in the year 800, deep within St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, a barbarian king knelt before the Pope.
When he rose, he was no longer just a Frankish warrior. He was Charlemagne, Emperor of the Romans, resurrecting an empire that had fallen 3 centuries before.
But how did barbarian tribes transform into the world's most powerful civilization? How did 1,000 years of knights, cathedrals, and crusades shape everything we know today? Welcome to medieval Europe.
In this video, we will journey through 1,000 years of European history. We'll explore the fall of Rome and the rise of new kingdoms, the power of the Catholic Church.
The clash between Christianity and Islam, the feudal system that defined medieval society, and the Renaissance that would end the Middle Ages forever. This is medieval Europe, 1,000 years in 17 minutes.
To understand medieval Europe, we must first witness the collapse of the greatest empire the world had ever known. By 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire, which had dominated Europe for 5 centuries, ceased to exist.
Germanic tribes, once considered barbarians, now ruled former Roman territories. The Visigoths controlled Spain, the Vandals held North Africa, the Ostrogoths ruled Italy, and the Franks dominated.
What remained was a fragmented continent, where Roman roads crumbled, cities shrank, and literacy nearly disappeared.
Yet from this chaos, a new order would emerge. The Catholic Church, headquartered in Rome, became the one unifying force across these barbarian kingdoms.
Latin remained the language of learning, and Christian bishops became the new administrators of civilization.
Among these barbarian kingdoms, one would rise above all others, the Franks.
This alliance between Frankish military power and Roman Christian authority would reshape Europe forever.
Over the next 3 centuries, the Frankish kingdom expanded dramatically, conquering neighboring territories and spreading Christianity by sword and scripture.
In 732, Charles Martel, grandfather of Charlemagne, defeated a massive Islamic army at the Battle of Tours, halting the Muslim expansion into Europe.
By the time Charles the Great, Charlemagne, became king in 768, the Franks controlled most of Western Europe.
Charlemagne was not just a warrior. He was a reformer who revived learning, standardized laws, and brought order to his vast empire.
His reign, known as the Carolingian Renaissance, marked the first cultural revival since Rome's fall. Monks filled scriptoria with copied wisdom. Schools reopened their doors to eager children. Stone churches and monasteries rose from the earth.
After Charlemagne's empire fractured in the 9th century, one institution remained strong, the Catholic Church. Monasteries became centers of learning, agriculture, and economic power.
The Pope in Rome claimed authority over all Christian kings. Excommunication, expulsion from the Church, could topple monarchs and ignite wars. Today,
in 1077, Emperor Henry IV waited barefoot in the Snot for 3 days, begging Pope Gregory VII for forgiveness. This was the power of the medieval church.
Days. But with power came corruption. Bishops lived like princes, church positions were
bought and sold, and salvation itself could allegedly be purchased with gold.
Reform movements arose. Monks like Bernard of Clairvaux called for a return to simple Christian virtues, poverty, and humility.
In 1095, Pope Urban II called for a holy war. Jerusalem, Christianity's holiest city, was under Muslim control. The Pope promised spiritual salvation to any who would take up arms.
Take up the cross! March to the Holy Land! God wills it!
Became the Crusader battle cry. Tens of thousands answered the call, marking the beginning of 2 centuries of religion.
The First Crusade set forth in 1096. A massive army of French, German, and Italian knights marched east, crossing through Byzantine lands toward the Holy Land.
The journey was brutal. Crusaders besieged city after city. Thousands died from hunger, disease, and battle before Eve. On July 15, 1099, the Crusaders finally captured Jerusalem. What followed was a massacre, a complex and impactful event with profound consequences for all communities involved. An atmosphere of intense struggle and change filled the streets.
The Crusaders established kingdoms in the Levant, the Crusader states. For nearly a century, European nobles ruled over a hostile Muslim population.
But Muslim forces regrouped under brilliant leaders like Saladin. In 1187, at the Battle of Hattin, Saladin crushed the Crusader army and recaptured Jerusalem.
The Third Crusade was marked by the involvement of Europe's prominent leaders, Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip of France. Despite Richard's military genius, Jerusalem remained in Muslim hands. The crusade ended in stalemate.
Subsequent crusades became increasingly corrupt. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 never reached the Holy Land. Instead, Crusaders sacked Constantinople, the Christian Byzantine capital, destroying...
By 1291, the last Crusader stronghold fell. The Crusades had failed. Hundreds of thousands had died. The divide between Christianity and Islam deepened for centuries to come.
While popes and kings waged holy wars, most Europeans lived under feudalism, a rigid social hierarchy that defined medieval life.
At the bottom were peasants, serfs who worked the land. Above them, knights provided military service, nobles controlled territories, and at the top, kings ruled by divine right.
Life for peasants was brutal. They worked from dawn to dusk, paid heavy taxes to lords and tithes to the church, and rarely traveled more than 10 miles from where they were born.
Disease, famine, and early death were constant companions. Average life expectancy was barely 30 years.
For nobles, life was different. Knights followed codes of chivalry, honor, bravery, and loyalty. Tournaments became grand spectacles where knights competed for glory and favor.
With him, castles served as both fortresses and administrative centers. While peasants starved, nobles feasted on elaborate meals of venison, wine, and imported spices.
Women's roles varied by class. Noble ladies managed estates when husbands were at war. Peasant women worked fields alongside men. Some found power in convents as abbesses.
Towns and cities offered alternatives to feudal life. Craftsmen organized into guilds. Merchants grew wealthy from trade. A new middle class emerged.
19 universities were founded: Paris, Bologna, Oxford. Scholars debated philosophy and theology. Arabic texts on mathematics and medicine were translated into Latin.
In 1347, ships from the east arrived in Sicily carrying an invisible killer. Rats carrying infected fleas brought the bubonic plague, the Black Death, to Europe.
The symptoms were severe: fever, vomiting, and painful swellings. The illness often claimed victims quickly.
The plague spread with terrifying speed, following trade routes. Within 5 years, it reached every corner of Europe, from Sicily to Scandinavia.
Between 1347 and 1353, the Black Death had a profound impact on Europe, drastically
Trilogies. During this difficult time, so many lives were lost that communities resorted to creating communal resting.
Communities blamed outsiders for poisoning wells. Thousands of Jews were burned alive, entire communities destroyed, victims of fear and ignorance.
But the plague transformed Europe. With fewer workers, survivors could demand wages. Serfdom began to crumble. The feudal system weakened. Labor had new value.
Revolts erupted across Europe. In England, France, and Germany, common people demanded rights and freedoms. The old order would never fully recover.
While plague ravaged Europe, England and France fought the 100 Years' War from 1337 to 1453. English longbowmen revolutionized warfare, slaughtering French knights at Crécy.
The war devastated France. English armies conducted chevauchées, raids burning villages and crops. Combined with plague, France seemed on the verge of collapse.
Then, in 1429, a 17-year-old peasant girl named Joan of Arc claimed God had chosen her to save France.
Against all odds, she led French forces to break the English siege of Orléans. Her victories turned the tide of the war. France rallied behind this unlikely warrior.
Captured by political adversaries, Joan was delivered to the English in 1431.
Sacrifice inspired France. By 1453, the English were expelled from all French territory except Calais. The 100 Years' War was over. France emerged as a unified nation.
As the Middle Ages waned, a cultural revolution began in Italy. The Renaissance, the rebirth, started in wealthy Italian city-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan.
Wealthy merchant families like the Medici became patrons of arts and learning. They funded artists, architects, and scholars who studied ancient Greek and Roman texts rediscovered from Byzantine and Arabic sources.
Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael revolutionized painting and sculpture with realistic perspective, human anatomy, and emotional depth.
In 1450, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press with movable type. For the first time, books could be mass-produced. Knowledge could spread beyond monastery walls. Within 50 years, millions of books circulated Europe. The Bible was translated into common languages. Scientific ideas spread rapidly. The monopoly on knowledge was broken.
In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to a church door, challenging papal authority and church corruption.
His ideas, spread by printing press, ignited the Protestant Reformation. Northern Europe split from Rome. The Catholic Church's 1,000-year monopoly on Western Christianity was shattered.
Beyond Europe, new worlds were opening. In 1492, Columbus reached the Americas. Portuguese explorers rounded Africa to reach India. The medieval world was expanding beyond recognition.
1453, the same year the 100 Years' War ended, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks. The last remnant of the Roman Empire was gone. An era had truly ended.
The world of 1500 was unrecognizable from the world of 500. Feudalism was dying. The church's power was broken. Nation-states were emerging. Global trade was beginning.
The Middle Ages shaped everything that followed. Our universities, legal systems, languages, and national identities all have medieval roots. From the cathedrals that still tower over our cities to the borders drawn by kingdoms long.
From the coronation of Charlemagne to the printing press, from Crusades to Renaissance, the Middle Ages were not dark. They were transformative.
1,000 years, countless lives, endless struggles. The medieval period forged the world we inhabit today, and in every cathedral spire, every university, every democratic.
More videos on European history are on the way, so make sure you're subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. Our patrons and members can watch extended content and behind-the-scenes material.